The world gameplay reveal of Mortal Kombat 1 is upon us, and Ed Boon has been at it again on Twitter with the various teases and hints. But for today's video, it opens up a good opportunity to jump back in time and potentially bring fans up to speed on what we could be seeing this week. Ed's Twitter saw a post made not that long ago with a screenshot of the MK4 character select screen with the caption, "Some making their way back into the action." Now, this definitely seems to confirm that somebody or some characters from this game will be returning to Mortal Kombat in the next installment. And for the fighters we already know are going to be there, this post will already eliminate Raiden, Johnny Cage, Liu Kang, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero, as those characters are already confirmed by either the trailer itself or the FAQ, which mentions Johnny Cage and the Jean-Claude Van Damme skin that's coming with him thanks to the combat pack. So, my theory here is that this game specifically being shown as a tease on Twitter has got to mean a Mortal Kombat 4 specific character will be making their return to the realm of NetherRealm era MK. Because why not just use any of the character selects from any of the titles? We already know that a bunch of these characters are confirmed, so this game in particular does seem to lead to that, right? And it leads to even more theories. My theory is that it could be a Mortal Kombat 4 character that we haven't seen in a very long time, because each new title does bring in older characters that we haven't seen for many years. With MK4 in particular, we've already had Tanya in MKX and Fujin in MK11, characters like Shinnok were in MKX and Quan Chi was in both X and 9, so with all that taken into account, who does that leave us with? Well, it leaves 3 possible candidates for an older character making a modern return, and that is Kai, Jarek, and Reiko. My guess is that it's going to be at least one of those characters, because again, why use MK4 specifically and mention a return being made? With my guess involving one of these fighters and totally being prepared to be wrong, it has inspired me to make this video before the gameplay trailer is revealed. Because I love Mortal Kombat 4, and I love all the characters that made their debut here. Today's video goes over Kai, Reiko, and Jarek to bring you all up to speed on what they were all about mechanically, on the chance that one of them makes the cut, and hopefully you'll have a point of reference for anything we could see this week or onwards. Obviously, I could be totally wrong here, and it could be a character in this game that isn't one of the 3 that I'm mentioning. But you know what? That's just something I'm going to accept, because I love talking about MK4, and truthfully, my desire to see Reiko again really kind of beats everything else. So let's take the read here and jump back into 1997. We start with Kai, a character who sadly has never been considered that good in either of his 2 appearances, as I've mentioned in the past, but in terms of tools and special moves that allow him to stand out, there is a lot of potential for this character should we ever see him again. Kai is mostly remembered in MK4 for 2 things, his vertical fireballs and the handstand stance. Kai's fireballs are kind of designed that they're meant to be a core part of his game plan. The one that lands from the sky will splat the opponent on the ground, and it's kind of one-dimensional. But it is the fireball that appears from the ground that's a lot more important, as in both titles that Kai has appeared in, the ground fireball launches and gives him combos. Now, the idea of a fireball appearing from the ground was nothing new, as Shang Tsung had something very similar and still does to this day, but that was always more of a defensive tool, designed for maintaining the ranged advantage. Kai's were often used a lot more aggressively, at least on paper. Sadly, his vertical fireballs in both games are just not that good because the tracking on them is absolutely dreadful. It was so easy to make these fireballs miss by even simple movement, so sadly a core part of his game plan was never allowed to work in his favor. But in a modern title, where there could be more variety to a fireball like this, it could end up being a really powerful tool. Especially when you look at modern games where characters can use things like a jump attack into an airborne special to beat anti-air attempts, or maybe even provide an element of mix-up. Look no further than Aftershock Tremor for something like that. My point here is that yes, his fireballs have always been weak, but they were weak in 2 games where projectile tracking was never that great to begin with. You could almost say that it was possibly a sign of its time, as MK4 and even Armageddon were not games made at a time where advanced projectile tracking to help a character in high level was really being considered. So the base of this in a modern title could be much stronger than we've ever seen it before. Secondly, and this was only in MK4, it wasn't present in Armageddon, was the handstand stance. This stance is pretty much a gimmick, and it doesn't hit people that much. But a stance that Kai can go into, which even visually is something that no one has ever had before, is something you could absolutely see again one day. And when it comes to potential, who knows how far it could go. In Mortal Kombat 4, his handstand was pretty much just 2 different kicks and a spinning mode that hits up to about 3 times. It didn't do much else, and that's that. But again, in a modern game, a stance like this could go into all sorts of mix-ups. A low hit maybe, an overhead, a grab, some kind of meter burn version should MK1 have a more traditional meter system than MK11 had. There's a chance that Kai, should he be in Mortal Kombat 1, would have a stance like this that does a ton more than it did in 97. Outside of that, Kai had a super roundhouse that was just kind of this big kick attack, but I don't know if we'd see much of that, as other characters are now a lot more famous for a move like this. Rain comes to mind straight away, and an anti-air punch that lifts Kai off the ground. These 2 moves are a lot more simple, but again, stuff like this could go into combo strings or throw animations, you never know really. But Kai in a modern game could, in theory, be a lot more focused on his aggressive, vertical projectiles and a stance that features who knows how many options. I'd love to see the elements most distinct to him be developed to even further push the mechanics that Kai is known for, despite only a tiny amount of playable appearances. Up next, one of Mustard's all-time favourites, Jarek. It's kind of funny to me how I'm seriously hoping that we see Reiko in the game, and Mustard has those same hopes, but for Jarek instead. I hope at least one of us are going to get the MK4 character we're after, or who knows, maybe we're both wrong. Either way, Jarek is often just called a second Kano in Mortal Kombat, and to be honest, I don't really think that's fair, especially when you look at his Armageddon moves. He did end up having his own identity, and I really think it was Armageddon that pushed this a lot further. It actually made Jarek a character with stuff that only he had in that game, and was a master of unbreakable damage. Not that I think his Armageddon stuff mechanically would return, Armageddon just had a lot of strange stuff that he was able to take advantage of, amongst other characters. With MK4, there isn't a huge amount to talk about because, yeah, he did have a lot of Kano's moves, mostly with the Kano Ball, which Jarek was given, and even the finishing moves are Kano's as well. It's almost as if Kano was going to be playable at some point, and they simply turned him into someone else, so there was a new character to put into the game or something like that. I can definitely understand why people would consider Jarek a Kano ripoff if Mortal Kombat 4 was the only game they saw him in. But he did have some stuff that stood out for Jarek in particular, mostly in the following moves. Jarek had a machete weapon. It was actually one of the better weapons in the game. It had good range on it, it had good safe combos that would launch on hit into good damage. It didn't have a lot going on, but all weapons were dead simple in MK4, so for what this weapon did, it was really good. Special move-wise, Jarek's most important tool was his ground pound. Jarek jumps onto the floor and does an unblockable that hits the entire floor. This gave Jarek some nasty options for free damage, or damage that was very likely if the opponent didn't wake up or jump or something. But there were instances Jarek could get a free ground pound, most notably in his standing throw. It would be plus enough on hit that you couldn't challenge the ground pound in any way. A few characters could punish this on hit, but it was extremely matchup specific. But that was Jarek in MK4 overall, a brawler who had fast moves, a good unblockable, a great weapon, and he just played the meta extremely well. It was Armageddon that turned Jarek into more of his own character, and here's why. Jarek kept the unblockable in Armageddon, and it was just as good here, if not better. Armageddon let you get a free ground pound off an air breaker, so Jarek had this ready to go whenever you launched him. The ground pound extended to certain knockdowns where a combo ender into ground pound would work before the opponent could actually get up. This all extended in moves that made Jarek more of his own, most notably his rope toss. Jarek used a rope to grab the opponent and flip them over his head. It launched for a full combo and had deceptively good range on it. It could catch a button from the opponent at range, it could punish certain attacks, and was his go-to combo starter if he landed a successful parry, which stuns long enough that a rope toss will connect. The rope itself is used in Jarek's flying dropkick special, which was unbreakable, and it lended itself to the unbreakable style of play that Jarek could use in a match. My point here is that with the rope specials and the many tools that his axe stance would offer him, Jarek was definitely much more of his own character in Armageddon compared to his Kano style that he had in Mortal Kombat 4, and with a new game, Jarek's potential could definitely be taken further, should this character be one of those that Ed Boon has teased on Twitter. But as always, only time will tell. From a more modern sense, Jarek is referenced in some MK11 character gear and is one of the key members of the Black Dragon. Mustard has mentioned this on stream a while back, but I'll repeat it here. It would be cool to see Jarek expanded as maybe even the technology character for the Black Dragon. His special moves that we know him for now could always be done again, but with more technology attached. Enhancements that make a dangerous ground pound make sense. Technology that fits a similar function to his Armageddon ropes or his flying dropkick. I'd love to see Jarek come back, but further developed within the Black Dragon story. And for someone that's usually joked about because of the infamous MK4 Jax ending, there's a lot more to this character than jokes alone, I tell you that much. And finally today, the character I personally am really hoping for is Reiko, a character who has served many of the famous villains of the series, and a character I went into more detail with in my recent video listing characters that I'd love to see return. Reiko, from a lore sense, is very much a love him or hate him character, but I'm talking about mechanics here, and mechanically, I would love to see what Reiko can do in a new title. Reiko's most famous attack is his flip kick. Now, it doesn't look like much, I'll give you that, but this tool was the ticket to incredibly fun and high-damaging combos in Mortal Kombat 4. This extended to Armageddon as well, where it's the main thing that grants this character high damage. He's got the shuriken projectiles that again were seen in both of his playable appearances. He's got a teleport in Mortal Kombat 4 that has multiple options, where it leads to jump normals, and he's even got an air throw that he can use from it. I see a character who has a lot of simple tools that are open for expansion in a future title. I'd love to see Reiko in MK1, where the flip kick is always there as a launching option, no matter the circumstances. I'd love to see it almost loopable to go along with his MK4 design, where the timing on those combos were tricky, sure, but a flip kick into teleport, a late jump button, and another flip kick was his best access to max damage. And obviously this doesn't even factor in what the cameo fighter system could add to all of this, and as of this video being made, we still really don't know how much of an impact the cameo fighters will have in the game. I'm going to assume a fair bit, as NetherRealm titles have always had the game's standout mechanic as a major part of every match, but the fact is, we still don't know. There's not much to add from MK4 to Armageddon, as Reiko's base design was quite similar. He lost some of his mobility in Armageddon, but I'm sure that was just a result of the sheer amount of characters that had to be playable in that game. Most of the characters were missing something that they had before, so it's hard to really factor in that. Reiko had a significant amount of lore added in the Mortal Kombat X comic, most notably his ties to Havoc and the blood magic that we saw in a decent chunk of that story, but MK1 seems like it's starting everything from the beginning, so how much of that story we'd see here, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty doubtful. Maybe some elements to it could remain, but it seems so likely that we're starting from scratch that, from a lore sense, I'm kind of prepared for it to be totally different. Reiko, to me, is absolutely one of those characters that could be redesigned from the ground up. Some of the most memorable attacks could certainly stay there, but Reiko feels like a rather significant blank canvas, as he was only playable twice, and his most famous moves, while being fun to play, are moves that are ridiculously open to change, giving him a whole new competitive identity perhaps. No one's ever really looked at Reiko mechanically and thought, that's why the character stands out for us. It's almost completely story related. And with other characters we've seen brought back after many years, the possibilities for a character like this are too much to count, in my opinion. And that's it for Kai, Jarek, and Reiko in today's video. Like I said, I could be totally wrong here, but that's okay. This pre-release period is always such an exciting one that I love taking opportunities to revisit games or characters that people likely aren't thinking about. You never know who actually is going to appear in a new Mortal Kombat, and with the universe now totally starting again in Liu Kang's new era, I'm pretty sure we could see anybody at this point. And if we're wrong about these characters and it ends up being someone like Tanya or maybe even Fujin back once more, I've already made a competitive history of all of those characters so that you can go back and check out my older videos for a point of reference. It's what this channel is all about after all, and hey, if the 3 characters in today's video aren't in MK1, at least you might have learned something. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Take care.